Let's talk. Not about what you should be doing to grow, succeed, or level up. You've heard that 1,000 times. This is about something even more important. What you should never tolerate. Not from your friends, not from your boss, not from your partner, and especially not from yourself. Because here's the truth. People don't always show up in your life waving red flags. Most of the time they show up with a smile. Charming, helpful, funny. But under the surface, they're testing your boundaries. Slowly, quietly, relentlessly. The moment you let one thing slide, a snide comment, a manipulative joke, a little lie, you've just handed them permission, and guess what? They'll take it. Every single time. You think you're being kind. You think you're avoiding drama. But what you're really doing, you're training them how to treat you. And listen, this isn't about being cold, or angry, or confrontational. This is about protecting your space. Because when you don't, it costs you everything. Your peace, your power, your identity. If you've ever left a conversation feeling smaller, confused, or like you had to shrink to keep the peace, this is for you. There are 5 behaviors, 5 that you need to draw a hard line around. No second chances, no excuses. Because tolerating them doesn't make you stronger. It makes you smaller. And we're not here to live small. So let's get into it. You ready? You know what's subtle? Disrespect. It doesn't always show up as someone screaming in your face or slamming doors. Most of the time it's a tone, a glance, a chuckle under their breath. When you speak, it's someone cutting you off mid-sentence, speaking about you like you're not in the room, or brushing off your ideas like they're nothing more than noise. It's not just rude, it's corrosive. Slowly, silently, it chips away at your confidence. And the worst part, it happens so gradually that you begin to accept it as normal. Disrespect doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it looks like sarcasm, passive-aggressive jokes that make others laugh, but leave you humiliated. Sometimes it sounds like, "I was just kidding," after they've said something that hit you right in the gut. You try to brush it off, you smile. You laugh nervously. You tell yourself, maybe I'm overreacting. But deep down, something doesn't feel right. And that feeling, that's your instinct. That's your built-in alarm system. And if you ignore it long enough, it goes silent. Not because the danger's gone, but because you've stopped listening. Here's something most people don't understand. People test you early. Not necessarily to hurt you, but to see what they can get away with. It's not always calculated or intentional, but it is very real. That coworker who interrupts you every time you speak in a meeting. The partner who keeps forgetting important things you say. The friend who never really listens and always redirects the conversation back to themselves. These aren't small things. They are signs. They are messages. And the longer you stay silent, the louder their behavior becomes. And let's be clear, respect isn't about agreeing with everything you say. It's not about fake smiles or empty compliments. Real respect means someone acknowledges your presence. They look you in the eye when you speak. They don't minimize your opinions. Even when they disagree, they make space for your voice without making you feel like you're intruding. That kind of respect, it's foundational. And if someone can't give you that, they shouldn't have access to you. Now let's talk about the other half of this behavior. Dismissiveness. Dismissiveness isn't just annoying. It's dehumanizing. It tells you that your thoughts don't matter, that your emotions are irrational, and that your presence is optional. It's someone waving their hand at you while you're speaking, as if your words are a waste of air. It's them saying, "Relax, you're being too sensitive," every time you try to express something real. That phrase, "You're too sensitive," is a favorite of people who can't take accountability. It's designed to shut you down, to make you question your perception, to get you to retreat. Don't fall for it. I've seen this behavior in some of the highest stakes environments, in interrogations, in negotiations, even among elite teams. The person who constantly disrespects others is often testing the room for weakness. They're trying to establish dominance to see who backs down first. And let me tell you, if you don't stand up for yourself early, They will label you as the one they can dismiss. Not because you deserve it, but because you didn't check it when it started. The most dangerous part? When this behavior becomes familiar, you start to adjust to it. You start to doubt your right to be heard. You start playing small, not because you want to, but because you feel like you have to. You begin to question whether your voice matters at all. That is the psychological cost of tolerating disrespect. And it doesn't stay in one area of your life. It spreads. It leaks into your relationships, your work, your self-worth. It changes how you show up in the world. So here's the question you need to ask yourself. What have I allowed that I never should have? Where have I made excuses for someone else's bad behavior? Just to keep the peace. How many times have I told myself, it's not a big deal when it absolutely was? And if your answer is too many, let this be your line in the sand. You are allowed to interrupt someone when they're cutting you off. You are allowed to say, excuse me, I wasn't finished speaking. You are allowed to call out condescending tones with, can you explain why you said that in that way? You are allowed to stop someone mid-joke and say, that's not funny. You are allowed to remove yourself from people who treat you like background noise. That's not being dramatic. That's not being difficult. That's being clear. That's being in command of your space. Respect isn't something you demand with your volume. It's something you demonstrate with your standards. People learn how to treat you by watching what you allow. And the longer you allow disrespect, the more it becomes the expectation. But the minute you push back, the moment you say no more, you reset the tone. It might be uncomfortable. It might shake things up. But I'll tell you what's more uncomfortable, living a life where you are constantly shrinking, constantly second-guessing, constantly making yourself smaller to accommodate someone else's ego. So here's the truth. The world will treat you exactly how you teach it to. And if you want to be respected, you need to start with yourself. No more dismissiveness, no more belittling, no more tolerating people who make you feel invisible. You see the signs, now act on them. And never forget, what you tolerate, you endorse. And you are far too valuable to endorse anything less than respect. Manipulation is one of the most dangerous behaviors a person can use against you, because unlike open hostility or clear disrespect, manipulation wears a mask. It hides itself. It convinces you that you're the problem. And when someone starts to gaslight you, when they begin to twist your reality, question your memory, distort your truth, you don't just feel confused. You feel like you're losing yourself. That's not an exaggeration. That's not drama. That's exactly how it works. Here's how manipulation starts. It doesn't come in screaming. It comes in soft, sweet, subtle. It shows up in people who seem to care. People who just want what's best for you. It's the friend who gives advice that benefits them more than it does you. It's the partner who makes you feel guilty for setting a boundary. It's the coworker who frames you as the problem when they're the one who's been undermining you the entire time. And it always starts small, just small enough that you don't push back. That's how they gain access. Gaslighting is the next level. It's not just about getting what they want. It's about controlling your perception of what's real. It's when they say something cruel, and when you confront them later, they say, I never said that. It's when you bring up something that bothered you, and they reply with, you're imagining things. It's when you're upset, and they tell you, you're just being emotional, like your emotions are a character flaw. You begin to question yourself. Did I hear that wrong? Am I making a big deal out of nothing? Maybe I am the one who's too sensitive. That's self-doubt. That's what they want. That's the tool. They chip away at your self-trust, so you rely on their version of events. And here's what makes it worse. Gaslighters are often charming. To everyone else, they're likable, helpful, funny. So when you speak up, people question you. Are you sure you're not misunderstanding them? They seem so nice. You start to isolate. You stop talking about it. And that silence becomes the gaslighter's best weapon. Because if no one sees it, it never happened. That's how they trap you. Manipulators thrive in confusion. They want you spinning, doubting, off balance, because the moment you're grounded, the moment you're clear-headed and calm, they lose power. Their entire strategy is built on emotional chaos. They might provoke you and then call you crazy for reacting. They might cross your boundaries and then blame you for setting them. They want to get under your skin and then use your reaction as proof that you're unstable, irrational, or difficult. And let's be real. Sometimes we make excuses for them. We say they're going through a lot, or they didn't mean it like that, or they just have a strong personality. But if you constantly have to explain away someone's behavior, if you're always giving them context, always rationalizing their actions, you're already being manipulated. Healthy people don't need to be defended all the time. Manipulators do, because deep down you know something is off. You just haven't given yourself permission to name it. You want to know a red flag that most people ignore? When someone refuses to take responsibility, but insists on controlling the narrative. That's textbook manipulation. It's not about solving problems or connecting with you. It's about winning. About staying in control. They want to control how others see them, how you see them, and eventually, how you see yourself. They use your kindness, your empathy, your patience against you. And that's why it feels so heavy. Because you're trying to fix something they never intended to fix. You're playing fair in a game that was rigged from the start. And if you're thinking, maybe I let this go on too long, stop right there. That's not weakness. That's conditioning. Manipulators are often very skilled at targeting people who are thoughtful, loyal, and emotionally intelligent. People who want to understand rather than accuse. People who lead with grace. That's not a flaw. That's your strength. But your strength needs direction. It needs to be paired with boundaries. The truth is this, when someone is gaslighting you, they're not just lying, they're trying to rewrite your reality. And when you start accepting their version of the truth, you start losing sight of your own. That's what makes it so damaging. It doesn't just hurt your heart, it breaks your mind. That's why walking away from a manipulator feels like waking up from a fog. You start remembering who you were before the confusion, before the second guessing, before you had to run every decision through a filter of fear. So how do you stop it? You start by trusting yourself. If something feels off, it is. You don't need a courtroom level of evidence to walk away from someone who makes you question your worth. You don't need validation from others to set a boundary that protects your mental clarity. You don't need permission to say, this is not okay with me, and mean it. You start listening to your instincts, the ones that got quiet when the manipulation got loud. You remind yourself that being clear is not being cruel, that leaving confusion behind is not abandonment, it's survival. You stop over-explaining. You stop negotiating with people who aren't interested in understanding. You stop tolerating emotional games that exhaust your spirit. And yes, some people will call you harsh. They'll say you've changed. They'll try to guilt you into shrinking back into the version of you that made them comfortable. Let them talk, because your clarity, that's your comeback. Your peace, that's your revenge. Your refusal to be controlled, that's your power. You are not here to be anyone's puppet. You are not here to carry someone else's chaos. You are not here to doubt yourself every time you speak. You are here to live fully, to speak clearly, to move confidently. And anyone who tries to rob you of that doesn't belong in your life. They don't need closure. They don't need another explanation. They need distance. Give it to them. Let's get something straight. Mistakes happen. Everyone messes up. Everyone gets it wrong sometimes. That's not the problem. The real issue, the one that poisons relationships, teams, and trust, is when people refuse to take responsibility for what they've done. They deflect. They deny. They play the victim. And slowly but surely, they make their mess yours. You bring something up that hurts you, and instead of hearing you, they pivot. Well, you're not perfect either. You try to hold them accountable, and they make it about your tone, your timing, your approach. Suddenly you're the one defending yourself, not them. This is the art of accountability dodging. It's slippery, it's calculated, and it's incredibly toxic because it puts the burden on the person trying to address the problem, not the person who caused it. When someone lacks accountability, they're telling you something loud and clear. They are more invested in protecting their ego than they are in preserving the relationship. Let that sink in, because when someone truly values you, when they respect the connection they have with you, whether it's personal, professional, or something in between, they own what they did. Not perfectly, not always immediately, but they get there. Because people who care about you will care about how their actions affect you. But the ones who dodge accountability, they always have a reason, always have an excuse, always have someone else to blame. It's their ex, it's their boss, it's their childhood, it's the stress, it's just how they are. And sure, those things may explain their behavior, but they don't excuse it. Explanations aren't get-out-of-jail-free cards. We all have pain. We all have pressure. But that doesn't give anyone the right to hurt others and then hide behind their story. Here's the part most people don't want to admit. Holding someone accountable isn't just about them, it's about you. Because when you keep accepting half apologies or worse, no apologies at all, what you're really doing is telling yourself that your pain is negotiable, that your standards are flexible, that your worth is conditional on how well you tolerate being mistreated. And it's not, or at least it shouldn't be. Let me tell you something about strong, self-aware people. They don't run from their messes. They don't pretend problems don't exist. They face them. They say, yes, I did that. Yes, it hurt you. And here's how I'll make it right. That's not weakness. That's not humiliation. That's strength. That's emotional maturity. That's leadership. And it's rare because owning your behavior takes courage. It takes vulnerability. It takes the humility to say I was wrong. And unfortunately, not everyone has the spine for that kind of truth. Instead, they blame circumstances. They gaslight you. They flip the script and suddenly they're the one needing an apology from you. It's exhausting. It's a game. And the only way to win is to stop playing. People who lack accountability are often incredibly charming. Until you confront them, then the charm disappears and you see who they really are. And that moment, that shift, that's the moment you need to pay attention to, because who someone is when they're called out tells you far more about them than who they are when everything's easy. It's not about demanding perfection. Nobody gets it right all the time, but you deserve to be around people who are honest when they get it wrong. People who don't disappear when it's time to have a hard conversation. People who can sit in discomfort, take in feedback, and grow from it. If someone can't do that, they are not emotionally safe. And emotional safety is non-negotiable. So why do so many people keep tolerating this behavior? Simple. Because confrontation is uncomfortable. Because it's easier to let it slide than to risk an argument. Because we convince ourselves it's not that big of a deal. But every time you let someone off the hook for hurting you without accountability, you teach them that hurting you has no consequence. That's the real danger. Not just the act itself, but the lesson they learned from your silence. And sometimes we stay silent because we don't want to lose them. But let me ask you something. What are you really holding on to? A connection where you're constantly the one swallowing the hurt, cleaning up the emotional mess, making peace just to keep the peace. That's not a relationship. That's a one-person job, and it'll break you over time. You want to know what real love, real friendship, real leadership looks like. It looks like someone saying, I messed up. I see that now. I didn't mean to, but I understand the impact. What can I do to make it right? That is accountability. That is integrity. That is someone you can build with, someone you can trust, someone worth keeping. And if you're thinking, I've never heard those words from certain people in my life, then maybe it's time to stop waiting. Maybe it's time to stop hoping they'll suddenly wake up and change. Some people only learn when they lose access. When the silence they gave you becomes the silence you give back. When you stop explaining, stop fixing, stop rescuing, and walk away. Because here's the bottom line. You don't need perfect people around you. You need honest people. People who can be flawed and still be accountable. People who don't run from the truth just because it's inconvenient. You don't need people who never mess up. You need people who care enough to clean it up when they do. So stop tolerating anything less. Stop accepting the bare minimum. Start demanding emotional maturity, not with ultimatums or anger, but with clarity and consistency. And if they can't meet you there, let them go. Your peace isn't worth their comfort. Your healing isn't worth their denial. Your life isn't meant to be a cleanup site for people who refuse to own what they break. Let them be uncomfortable. Let them sit in their mess, and let yourself rise free, clear, and done chasing accountability from people who never intended to give it. Control doesn't always look like someone barking orders or raising their voice. More often, it shows up quietly. It disguises itself as concern, as love, as guidance. It slips into your life through little comments, subtle restrictions, and guilt-laced questions that make you second-guess your decisions. Are you really going to wear that? Why didn't you call me back right away? I just worry about you hanging out with those people. At first it might feel flattering, like someone cares deeply. But very quickly, that care begins to feel like a cage. The truth is, controlling behavior is never about love. It's about power. It's about someone needing to dictate how you move, how you think, who you speak to, what you wear, how you spend your time, and eventually how you see yourself. And the scariest part, it doesn't happen all at once. It's not a wall that drops on top of you. It's a slow tightening of the grip. You don't even realize it's happening until you look up one day and realize you've become smaller than you used to be. A person who wants to control you will often claim to be protecting you. They'll say, I just want what's best for you. But what they really mean is, I want what's comfortable for me. They'll use phrases like, I know you better than you know yourself. That's not love. That's erasure. That's someone trying to override your intuition, your autonomy, your right to choose for yourself. And the longer you stay in that dynamic, the more you lose your voice. Not because it was taken from you, but because you stopped using it. Controlling behavior often shows up in small, consistent acts. They monitor your social media. They question who you're texting. They want access to your passwords, not because of trust, but because of surveillance. They isolate you from your friends, maybe not overtly, but in ways that cause guilt. You spend more time with them than with me. They're not really your friends. And little by little, your circle shrinks until it's just you and them. And in that space, control becomes complete. This doesn't only happen in romantic relationships. It happens with friends. It happens at work. It happens in families. Anyone who makes you feel like you have to earn the right to live your own life is trying to own you. That's not guidance. That's not mentorship. That's control wrapped in concern. And it is one of the most insidious forms of emotional manipulation because it trains you to think you need permission to be yourself. And if you've ever been in that kind of dynamic, you know how heavy it feels. You start filtering every decision through someone else's potential reaction. You dress not for yourself, but for what they'll say. You turn down plans because you don't want the fight. You hide parts of yourself, your opinions, your interests, even your joy, because you know it'll cause tension. That's not peace. That's survival. That's what control does. It doesn't just restrict your actions, it rewires your thinking. But the control isn't always obvious. Sometimes it looks like subtle guilt trips. You used to care more about me. If you really love me, you wouldn't do that. It becomes emotional blackmail, where love is conditional and approval has to be constantly earned. That's not how healthy love works. In healthy love, you're seen, you're supported, you're allowed to evolve. In controlling dynamics, you're tolerated as long as you fit into the box someone else built for you. And sometimes you don't even realize how deep it's gone until you try to set a boundary. That's when the mask slips. You say no, and suddenly you're selfish. You ask for space, and suddenly you're abandoning them. You express discomfort, and suddenly you're too much. That reaction, that's a test. Controlling people don't get angry because you did something wrong. They get angry because you stopped complying, because you started reclaiming your autonomy. And to them, that's the threat. But here's the thing, they only have the power you give them. And that's not to blame you. That's to empower you. You don't have to explain your entire life to someone just to prove you're allowed to make your own choices. You don't need to ask for permission to be independent. You don't need to water yourself down to fit someone else's idea of who you should be. If someone truly cares about you, they will celebrate your freedom, not try to restrict it. They will respect your boundaries, not punish you for setting them. They will support your growth, even when it makes them uncomfortable. Control is not love. Control is fear, dressed up as loyalty, and you are not here to be controlled. You are here to live fully, freely, authentically. So if you feel like you're constantly walking on eggshells, constantly asking yourself, will this upset them? Take that as a sign. If your choices no longer feel like your own, if your life is being managed more than it's being shared, you don't need to adjust to that. You need to exit that. Because over time, that kind of control doesn't just limit you, it breaks you. It makes you forget who you were before someone started shrinking you down. But you can remember, you can reconnect, you can reclaim, and it starts with one decision: refusing to be controlled. Refusing to apologize for wanting freedom. Refusing to stay small just to make someone else feel big. You don't need their permission to be whole. You don't need their approval to choose yourself. And you sure as hell don't need their comfort to grow. You are not here to be managed. You are here to move freely, to speak boldly, to take up space without guilt. Anyone who can't respect that doesn't deserve access to your life. It's that simple. You can have all the talent in the world, all the charm, all the intelligence, all the ambition, but if you lack integrity, none of it means anything. Integrity is the thread that holds character together. Without it, people can't trust you. Without it, relationships collapse. Without it, everything you build is resting on a foundation that will eventually crumble. And yet, in today's world, we often let it slide. We let the lies go unchallenged. We ignore the shady behavior. We excuse it because someone is fun or successful or too important to lose. But here's the truth. The moment you start tolerating a lack of integrity, you're sacrificing your own values for someone else's comfort. Lack of integrity isn't just about big lies or obvious betrayals. It's the little things. The colleague who takes credit for your work, the friend who talks behind your back and smiles to your face, the partner who tells half-truths, leaving out just enough to keep you in the dark. It's breaking promises. It's saying one thing and doing another. It's claiming to live by a certain set of values, but only when it's convenient. You can't trust people who operate like that. You may want to. You may try to convince yourself that they mean well, that they'll change, that they didn't realize what they were doing. But deep down, you know, when someone repeatedly shows you that their words don't match their actions, believe them. Stop hoping for the version of them that shows up in good moments. And start paying attention to the version that shows up when it counts. The absence of integrity is a warning sign, and too often we ignore it because we don't want to deal with the discomfort. We don't want the confrontation. We don't want to admit that someone we trusted isn't who we thought they were. But denial is dangerous. When you stay silent in the face of dishonesty, you become complicit in it. You teach people that they can lie to you, mislead you, disappoint you, and still have access to your life. And let's be clear, nobody's perfect. Everyone has slipped. Everyone has made mistakes. But integrity isn't about being flawless. It's about owning your flaws. It's about saying, yes, I did that, and here's how I'll make it right. People with integrity don't hide from their mistakes. They face them. They clean up their mess. They put truth above pride, and they do it consistently. Not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. What's most dangerous about tolerating people with no integrity is that over time, their behavior starts to normalize. You start to adjust, you lower your expectations, you start saying things like, well, that's just how they are, or everyone lies a little. No, that's how it starts. That's how you lose your own standards. And soon you find yourself surrounded by people you can't rely on, people you can't believe, people who leave you questioning everything they say. In professional environments, lack of integrity is a team killer. It poisons trust, it destroys morale, and it always spreads. One person cutting corners, one person operating in the shadows, it sets a tone. And if leadership allows it, everyone else starts to wonder why they should bother doing the right thing. That's how entire systems break down. The same goes for families, friendships, relationships. When integrity is missing, nothing works the way it's supposed to. You need people in your life who tell the truth, even when it's hard. People who admit when they're wrong, even when it hurts. People who do what they say they're going to do, even when no one is watching. That's what integrity looks like. It's not glamorous. It doesn't always get applause, but it's solid, it's dependable. It gives you peace. And that peace is priceless. Because when you're around people with integrity, you don't have to constantly watch your back. You don't have to second guess every conversation. You don't have to decode their words or wonder if their actions are hiding something. You can relax. You can focus on growing, building, living without the constant anxiety that something is going to fall apart behind your back. The cost of surrounding yourself with people who lack integrity is high, and the longer you ignore it, the more expensive it becomes. Mentally, emotionally, sometimes even financially. The lies catch up. The deception turns into damage, and by the time you realize it, you're left picking up pieces you didn't break. So stop making excuses for people who show you they can't be trusted. Stop tolerating half-truths. Stop brushing off dishonesty because they're not that bad. You know what you're seeing. Don't gaslight yourself into thinking it's not real. You don't need perfect people, but you need honest people. Real people. People who show up with truth, not just when it's convenient, but especially when it's not. And if you're thinking about the people in your life right now and realizing they've let me down more than they've stood up, then maybe it's time to make a change. Maybe it's time to start surrounding yourself with people who hold themselves to a higher standard. And maybe that starts with you. Because your integrity isn't just about how you treat others. It's about how you treat yourself. Do you walk away from what's wrong, even when it's familiar? Do you speak the truth, even when your voice shakes? Do you keep your promises, even when they get hard to keep? That's where your power is. That's what sets you apart in a world that's become far too comfortable with cutting corners. Integrity isn't loud. It doesn't beg for attention, but it always reveals itself. It's the quiet confidence of someone who doesn't need to lie, the calm presence of someone you can count on, the steady hand of someone who tells the truth, even when it's not popular. And that kind of person, that's the one you protect at all costs. So start protecting yourself from anyone who shows you repeatedly that their words mean nothing. You don't need to fight them. You don't need to fix them. You just need to walk away. And remember this, when you stop tolerating lies, excuses, and half-truths, you create room for people who live with truth, honor, and courage. You make space for integrity to exist. And in that space, your life begins to thrive. Here's what it all comes down to. What you tolerate becomes your standard. Every time you allow disrespect, manipulation, a lack of accountability, controlling behavior, or dishonesty to go unchecked, you're not just letting it slide, you're silently saying, this is okay. And it's not. Not for who you are, not for where you're going. You were not made to shrink, to fit into someone else's comfort zone. You were not put here to be silenced, questioned, doubted, or controlled. You were built for more, for clarity, for strength, for truth. And the only way you rise into that is by getting brutally honest about what no longer deserves space in your life. Walking away from toxic behavior isn't cold. It's not rude. It's not dramatic. It's necessary, because every time you choose peace over chaos, standards over excuses, truth over comfort, you reclaim a piece of yourself. You step deeper into your worth, and the world responds to that. So don't lower your voice to be heard. Don't dull your fire to make others feel warm. Stand your ground, protect your space, honor your gut, and above all, never apologize for expecting the same respect, truth, and accountability that you offer to others. You don't need to beg for respect. You don't need to chase integrity. You set the tone by what you allow, what you confront, and what you walk away from. You have one life. Protect it with everything you've got.